Alright, so for this assignment, we're going to be working on a car center console. And it's basically this center area here where we're going to create our own little design, but we're going to have the AC vents, we're going to have a radio, we'll have the AC controls, we'll have a little dash or a little cubby there, and then the stick shift if we have time. We should have time for all of that. So it's always good to go out there and look at reference, see what else is out there. I do recommend you just kind of, take it easy, go with the plan that I have. There can be some modification to it, but you don't want to go too crazy and kind of shoot yourself in the foot with how much extra work you have to do to create this stuff. Okay, so hopefully you went through the intro video for the NURB surfaces and you kind of understand a little bit about them. So now what we can do is just start building this thing. So let's go to project window. Let's make a new project. This will be in our 2510 folder. Maybe just call it CarConsole _ your last name. Alright, so let's create some shapes. So, many ways we can do this. I like to start off with a CV curve. And I don't draw in perspective view, so I'm going to switch to my side view, right view. And I'm just going to lay out the shape of it. Okay, so I'm just laying out basically this structure here. Okay, and I'm going to hit right click and go to control vertex. Make sure this thing is big enough. Okay, and you can see where my grids are, and you can see how I kind of have this thing laid out. I'm actually going to go up like this at the end. Okay, I'm just softening this edge just to make sure it goes nice. I'll make it a little bit taller. Now let me switch to perspective view to take a look at it in 3D. Alright, that should be pretty good there. Okay. So now we have that. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to pull it off to one side. So let's say I take this to, let's say -5. A little bit more, -6. Okay. So I'm going to take it to -6. I'm going to duplicate it, bring it to +6. And now I have these two pieces here that I can just go to surfaces, go to loft. I'm going to reset this, and we should be good with the default settings. Okay. Now I do want to have a little bit of an arch to this. I don't want it to be perfectly straight across flat. So if I go under the loft options and I go to section spans, I just put this up to 2, you see how I get an extra division down the middle. So I can go right click and go to hull, and hulls are like edges, so I can just grab this middle edge. I'm going to go to my side view again, and I'm just going to pull it up a little bit and pull it over a little bit. And you'll see once I go back to perspective that it just gives us a little bit of a bowing in here. Okay. Now I do need to grab these edge ones. Come on. Edge one here, shift click the edge one here, and just push that back a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my side view again, push it back a little bit, push it down a little bit. Okay, and there's a little bit of a taper here that'll go away once we're set with it. Okay, so you can definitely see that arching happening right here. Alright, so that's the front of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create the sides of this. So we're going to go to NURBS primitives square. And just create a square, and I'm just going to size it up. Bring it to about the edges of this. We don't want to go all the way, just about the edges. So we'll say about here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this bottom edge, and I'm going to fillet these guys here. So I'm going to grab these two curves, edit curve, fillet curve, there it is, curve fillet, option box. Make sure that trim is clicked on. Make sure I have a somewhat low radius and hit apply. Okay. Now the reason I hit apply is that way I can look at it and say, okay, is this good? That's probably good. But if I didn't like it, I could hit undo. I could change this value, hit apply again. Okay. And every time I want to make sure that it does undo that. And I always want to make sure that I'm looking in here to see how many objects we're getting. So edit curves, curve fillet, trim, 0.25, good. Now I can just grab these two curves and do the same thing. Okay, so I have a nice little curve right there. So now I'm just going to grab all these and delete the history. I'm going to go to edit curves and go to attach curve option box and turn keep originals off and set this to connect, attach. Now remember that every time we do a attach, sometimes it doesn't really get rid of the history. So it doesn't get rid of the old curves. So if I go to the outliner, here's my original one that I created. Here's on the top left, here's right, that's still there for some reason. Here's a fillet curve that's still there, and here's the other fillet curve that's still there. So I want to get rid of all those. The way I get rid of them is I grab everything and delete the history. And then I find the correct shape, which is this guy. And I just move it away and then delete the other stuff. Okay? That way I'm only left with one object at the end. So I should have the two curves, my lofted surface. I have a perspective one for some reason. I can delete that. And then I have my thing here. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click or duplicate, scoot it in, shift that one, and loft between these. Okay? So now eventually what's going to happen is I need to cut this thing off here. So I'm just going to grab this back one and just pull it forward until it's perfectly lined up with this edge. So I'm just going to click on this arrow here to indicate the direction I want to snap. I'm going to zoom in on this edge. I'm going to hold down C and then just middle click and drag right there. Okay? Now I can see the thing pop into place, and that's what I want. Maybe a little bit more back. That. Okay. Alright, that should be good. Alright, so I'm just going to grab everything, delete the history. I may need to modify some things, but we'll see. Alright, so now I'm going to take these two shapes that I've created, and I want to create a fillet between them. So edit curves, or sorry, edit NURBS, surface fillet, circular fillet. I need to create the curves on the surface. That way we get something that it can cut out. And I don't know what this radius is going to be, but I know it's going to be less than 1. So 0.1, good starting point. So we fillet. And if we go to wireframe, which is where we want to always look at these, and I look at the direction this is going, I can say, okay, well this is, if I hit 3, it's obviously going in the wrong direction. Okay? So I'm just going to come to my options for the fillet and just make one of these negatives. I'll make the primary negative. Nope, that didn't do it. Make the secondary negative. Yep, that did it. Okay, so now it's like rounding back into the surface, which is where I need it to. Okay, good. So now I can go to Edit NURBS Trim Tool and say I want to trim this piece here. I want to keep this back piece. Hit Enter. Okay, now I want to do the same thing to this, so I went back to the Trim Tool, but it's not going to let me do it. And the reason it's not going to let me do it is because if I look at this surface here and this one here, when it did the fillet, it never went right to the edge. Okay, which is fine. We don't need to go right to the edge. But I do need to get a curve on here just so I can chop it off. So I'm going to go to the front view, or side view. There we go. And I'm going to go in with my edit curves, or sorry, my create curves. And I'm just going to draw a couple points over here. 4 points right there. So I'm going to click on this, shift click on that surface, edit NURBS, project curve on surface, and just make sure this is set to active view. I'm in the side view, project. And what that does, it just creates a little curve that kind of fills in that gap that it was missing. So then I can go back to the trim tool, click on this piece. I want to keep this piece. I also want to keep that piece just to make sure, and hit Enter. Okay, so now there's my console. So then I could say, you know what, it's maybe a little bit too short on this end. So I can just go to Hull and grab this and pull that down a little bit. You'll see that it's moving the surface. I'm just going to hit undo a couple times. There we go. Until we get back to here. Okay. At this point, the fillet, it still isn't there. We hit undo again. There we go. Okay, so now the fillet's gone. So now I can lower this down, which I should have done before. I just didn't for whatever reason. There we go. It's better to have it too long than not long enough. So now we'll put our fillet back on. We had to make both of these negative, so I'll make both of those negative. Okay, I had to go into the front or the side view, and I had to draw a little curve. Create CV curve. And it's just me cutting it off. Shift click that surface. Project the curve on the surface. And so now I should be able to go to the trim tool and say I want to keep this and that. Click on this piece, I want to keep this, and enter. Okay, so there we go. So now if I grab everything, delete the history, we should have a nice little fillet rounding the entire corner, which we do. Alright, so now we can go through and just do a little bit of organization. Let's go in the outliner. I'm going to grab my curves here, Control G to group them, and just make a curves group. Here's my fillets, here's some other stuff. So 2 more curves, those middle drag. Use the middle mouse button to drag those into the curves group itself. And those are just some pieces out there. Good. Okay. Now let's make a layer. Oops, I want to close the outliner. Let's make a layer for the curves. There you go. Now the curves are on a layer and they're just kind of hidden. Alright. So then what we want to do is kind of block out where our shapes are going to go, just so we have an idea of what is going to be happening with it. So I'm just using a polygon cube. We don't need to use anything fancy, just polycube. And the reason I'm using this is just because it's a solid object where the NURBS cube is actually pieces. So let's say there's our vents, like that. I'll duplicate this down for the radio. There's the AC controls. And this is why we're doing this, just so we can kind of get the spacing before we start putting stuff in. There's a little storage unit. You know, you put your change in there, put your sunglasses, whatever. This will be the stick shift. And if we have time for a cup holder, that'll be where the cup holder goes. The cool thing about NURBS is that we can just add stuff in as we go. I'm going to add another tray or whatever back there if I desired. Okay. So we have the AC vents, we have the radio, we have the AC controls, we have a little storage unit, stick shift, and then cup holders if we need it. So those look like they're good spacing. Let me just drop these on a new layer. And just call it placeholders. And I'll Control G to group those, make sure they're on there, make sure I label the group, and hide it. Okay, there we go. Alright, so now that we have this, I brought it back. I want to template it. That way I can still see through it, and then I can start creating my pieces of geometry. So let's start with the AC vent. So I'm going to go up to Google. Then we're going to type in AC vents. And we're just going to do a standard one. These ones can be kind of cool. We can try to do something like that. Or we can just stick with these basic ones. It's the same process, just a matter of the shape that you're going to use. So I'm just going to go and create a NURB square. And remember, just like a NURBS cube, a NURBS square is again comprised of several pieces and not just the individual piece. You see how all four of these are different pieces of that square. So I'm going to grab these two, edit curves, curve fillet. Let's try 0.25. That looks pretty good. So I'll marquee the next two, apply, marquee the next two, apply, marquee the next two, apply. So now we've filleted and applied that to all those. So now what I can do is take this and go to edit, delete history first, then edit curves, attach curve, make sure it's on connect, make sure it's on keep originals off. There we go. We'll delete the history, we'll move it out, and then we'll delete all the garbage that's left behind. Okay. So that process is going to be the same for every object that we create. We're taking curves, we're filleting them, we're attaching them, we're deleting the history, moving it, and then deleting all those extra pieces. Okay, let me go to the front view so we can see this better. And I believe, yes, I modeled this backwards. If I go to the front view, this is actually the back of the model. So what I can do is just change this around. So I can go to view, oops, and say back view. And now I can see exactly what that shape is. Yeah, so we're just placing this about there. If I need to resize, I'm just going to go to Control Vertex by right-clicking it, and then I can scoot this over. I don't want to get too close to this edge here. I want to leave some room. There we go. So now I can just duplicate, set this to be positive, and I can see that I'm off. If you look at where this line is here and where this line is, you see that these are not perfectly lined up. There's a little bit too much gap on the side. So it happens sometimes. So I'm going to delete the one, and I'm going to go duplicate this one again, and I'm going to put the pivot. So I'm hold down D and V, D and X, and move the pivot over here to the center line. And now if you look, if I grab the red and I scale it like that, I should be able to flip this thing all the way over just by taking the scale of X and making it negative. And there we go. So now if we look at this spacing here and this spacing here, they're good. Okay, so there they are. Alright, cool. So there's my vents. Now I can take one of these and duplicate it. Pull it down here. I'm going to turn my grid off for a minute. It's a little checkerboard right there. I'll reset this to 0. And I'm not going to grab this like this and scale it out. Just to exaggerate it, you see I do that and I lose my roundings. So I'm going to right click and go to Control Vertex and pull this over here. Pull this over here. Okay, so now I can again duplicate, scoot it down for my AC controls. There we go. Duplicate again. This one's just going to be like an eyeballing. I think I'll take the next one up. A little closer to the correct size. Okay, you can see that I've gone past where I want to go. Just going to go to Control Vertex again, just grab them and just scoot them in. So you can see what we're doing, just kind of lining these things up so that everything's a little bit closer to where it needs to be. That's really the purpose of doing that. Oops. These little placeholders, it just makes it a lot easier to get things in the spots we need to get them in. Alright, so there we go. So now we have our lineup here. Alright, so now let's go into this and start cutting this out. Okay, because we have these curves here, so now we need to actually go in there and start cutting pieces off of this. Let me just scoot these a little bit closer. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab these two pieces here. I'm going to extrude them, and I'm going to use distance. And I know I'm going to go in the Z direction, so if I just say specify Z, and I know it's going to be, probably bigger than 1, so I can set this to 5. Hit apply. 5 is a pretty close estimate. If I need to, I can always grab the curves and push the curves in. There we go, I got a little bit more room. I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's push it in a little bit more. Now this one I actually probably want to rotate it slightly. Okay, not as crazy as I have my stencil here, but maybe just slightly rotate it. Okay, now I don't want to just do Z because it'll just go straight back into Z. What I want to do is do profile normal. And what that's going to do is just figure out which direction it should go and go that way. Okay, so it figured out the direction we wanted it to go, and there we go. Okay, so I can rotate it a little bit more, stick it in, take a look at it. Too much. There we go. If I go to the side view, if you look at it from the right side, you can see there's a little slight angle to it, but nothing crazy. There we go. I think I'm going to take this one a little bit further. Instead of this being 5 for the length, and just make it 10. It's obviously huge, but it's better to have it too big than too small. So there we go. We'll take this guy, 5 should be good. This guy, 5. Okay, so now we've cut out, not cut out, but created a shape for all these pieces. So now we're just going to do a little bevel, or a little fillet between all of these. Okay, So what I want to do is, let me just pull up a NURBS plane. Let me just pull out a NURBS plane way over here. Okay, so I'm just going to take this guy here and this guy here and just do a fillet on them. Okay, so here's my default fillet. It comes in right here. Remember, if I make this one negative, it flops over to that side. If I make this one negative, it flops it down there. If I make this one positive, it flops it here. Okay, so that's the kind of game we're going to be playing on this thing, just to kind of get this into the right spot. So I have to make sure that it comes, basically it's going to come off this surface and then fillet and then go into that surface. Okay, so let's go to circular fillet. Create curve on surface. These two can be off for right now. I'm just going to hit apply. Okay. If I look at this, it looks like it's on the inside of this. Yes, it's definitely rounding the other way that I need. So I'm just going to hit undo. Make this reverse on here. Apply. Okay, not the right way. Undo. Switch the other one. There we go. Okay, so both of these on reverse give me this look of this thing coming off of, try to find a good angle of this. It's the best one I can get. Coming off the top and then rounding into it. Okay. Now, if it didn't work, let me just close these. I could lower this amount, so negative 0.05 and negative 0.05. Okay. I actually probably like the smaller fillet better anyway, so I'm just going to stick with that. So now I'm going to click this, shift click that, and circular fillet that. And it actually went backwards. If you look at this one, it's actually like bubbling out instead of rounding into it. Okay, so I'm just going to select these in the opposite order. This, then that. So my settings should already be set. Alright, apparently not. That one just doesn't want to go in the right spot. Alright, so play with these until I get it the right way. And that's the right way. Now I always want to double check. You know, sometimes I do make a mistake, so I want to make sure that's right. Okay. So there we go. So that's good. So now I'll do the same thing here. Fillet it. I can see it's going the wrong way, so I'll make this one positive. Make this one positive. Oops. That's good. And your number is not going to be the same as mine. You just got to figure out what numbers are yours. So I'm doing a fillet here. I'll make this one positive. That looks good. Yep. We'll do the same thing here. Make one of these positive. This one's going to be negative. This one's a little bit trickier just because it's on this weird angle. Just got to find a better angle to look at this at. It definitely looks like it's rounding down like this. I don't want that. That's the way we want it. Positive for one, negative for the other. Good. Right. There we go. That's good. Come on. It's kind of nice to get all these out of the way that we don't have to worry about them. That way we don't have to worry about them. Okay, good. So now I'll click on this surface here, Edit NURBS, Trim Tool, and I'm going to say what I want to keep here. Okay. Now I'm actually going to undo this in a second because I want to keep some extra pieces. So if I just say I want to keep this and hit Enter, well, that's great. I keep those pieces, but now I have holes in all these areas, and I have to create a piece that will go inside each one of these holes. It's not bad, but sometimes I want to keep an extra piece around. So I'm going to undo it. I'm going to duplicate it and just make a new layer over here and just hide it. Okay. That way I just have a backup in case I need to come back to this and create a surface. I can do that. So now I'm going to go back to the Trim tool, Edit NURBS, Trim tool. Say I want to keep that, and voila. Click on this, go to the Trim tool, say I want to keep this, good. Keep that, good. Keep that, good. And see how just easy this becomes once you're kind of used to the process. We're doing the same thing over and over again. Oops. And up here, of course, we have two. Grab both of them. All right, and you see we've cut it out. Let me hide my curves. So let me turn my layers off, or my surfaces selection off up here. Marquee the whole bit. Oops. Right click on curves and add it. And that should be good. Let me hide my placeholders. I got something weird right here. Oops. Surface selection back on. Alright, that's definitely a weird spot. Let me just go to my creating a curve here. Like that. And I'm just going to shift click the surface with the curve, project the curve onto the surface, and then see if I can just trim that off. Oops. Go to Edit NURBS Trim Tool. I want to keep this. There we go. Okay, and I'm not going to get that close to this area. It just bothered me that was sticking up. Okay, so now if we look at this without any of that stuff turned on, you can see how we had these nice little areas here where we could start to put in some of our stuff. Okay. And again, we're going to have holes. We'll fix the holes later. A lot of this is just a representation of those surfaces just not blending together nicely. And like I said, that'll just be something that we'll fix in the future. So I'm going to create a NURBS plane. And I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And just create some fill-in planes for all of these things. There we go. Duplicate that, scoot it down. This could probably use some rotation here, but I'm going to keep these straight. I'm gonna set these things up, do them perfectly straight, and then I'm going to rotate them back. It's going to be a little bit easier to get those in the right spot. Now this guy's a little bit different case. There's nothing really going on him, so I am just going to rotate him back to that. Alright, so now you can see how we have these things kind of filled back in. I'm just going to use one for this area here. No sense in having two. There's nothing really going on this, except it's just going to be a dark color, just to, you know, because we don't have the engine. So we'll just darken that color in there. Obviously this one's sticking out, so just scale it in. Good. Okay, so you can see how this is coming together. Let's save our scene here. Console holes cut 0, 1. Alright, that's good. Okay, so now let's start down here. It's a nice little area just to kind of fill in something. Okay, and what I want to do is just put a little fillet here. That's all that's going to happen here. Just a little fillet. And it's miraculously going in the correct direction. I just need to make sure it's bigger. So maybe -0.2, -0.2. Okay, so you see what it looks like from this side. It just blends those two surfaces in together. That's good. Now I don't need to trim this because this is on the side that I need it to be on. So there's no point in even trimming that. I'll just leave it the way it is. Then I want to create these little like grooves, those little pieces of rubber that kind of stick down. So I'm going to go to create polygons. Okay, this is going to be a polygon shape, just to keep it simple. And I'm just taking a cube and just sizing it up. Just laying it down inside here. And then I'm going to put some bevels on this. So edit mesh, bevel. I'm going to come over to the offset. And let's say set that to 0.2. There we go. So a nice little ridge right there. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is go to my side view. I can see where this ridge is at. I can see the angle of this and the angle of that. I'm just going to rotate it so those angles are a little bit closer together, like that. So now it's just a matter of duplicating. Now you'll see that my move tool is automatically moving it this way. If I double click my move tool, I have it set to object. Okay. Typically it's set to world. So I set to object. It makes it much easier to get this thing to move right along that path. And then I can hit Shift-D, 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 all the way down till we get to about the end. You'll see we have these nice little grooves in here. It actually looks like, you know, something that would be in a car. Like that. And if we wanted to, we can put a little dome here, put a little light, you know, if we get time for those extra bits of detail. Alright, so that guy's done. Let's go to the outliner and just organize again. You have to organize often in this scene just because things just get out of hand very quickly. Let's take these fillets here. Let me just grab everything and delete history. It's always a good bet. Every once in a while as we're working. Okay, so these cubes, I'm just going to group them, Control G, and put the, give them a name, rubber pieces, storage. Okay, and then this is part of the storage thing here, this is part of the storage thing here, and this is part of the storage thing there, as well as this here. Okay, so I have all the storage pieces that are part of that, so I can group that and call it storage area. Okay, and then as we start doing some of this other stuff, we'll start grouping all of these things. All right, I have another curve here, so I'm just going to middle drag it into my curves group. All these extrudes are just those pieces, that's fine. This guy is nothing. See there's no plus sign next to him? He's gone, so I can delete that. These other ones are all these pieces here. Okay, wonderful. All right, so now let's go up to, we'll do the AC vents. So we'll look at the AC vents. We're looking at something like this. So if we look at it, it's basically just these pieces of plastic here. There's a bigger piece of plastic there. Then we have these side pieces of plastic. Okay, we could make it out of one piece, and that would be sufficient too. So let's try the one piece just to see what happens. And again, I'm just going to use polygons for this because it's going to be easier to do. So I just moved it up here by snapping it with the C key. You don't have to do it with the C key. I just do it with the C key because it's easier. Okay, let me get this about sized. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes there. 1, 2, 3, 5. That's 5 that we have. So we need 6. Let's put that to 12. There we go. Let me set this to 3. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to grab these edges here and there and scale it out. Then grab the face, every other face, and just delete it. And I miscalculated something. So I'm going to do undo, and keep undoing until we get back here. All right. So I need an odd number. That way, just double check. There we go. That way I end up with a border here and a border there. Okay. So now again, we'll take these and scale it out. And then grab every other face and delete it. Hit 3, and you see how I get these little roundings, like kind of like that, not perfectly like that, but kind of. I'm going to turn on wireframe, which is this guy right here, next to the checkerboard. That way we can see this, what it's doing. Okay. So I'm going to go through and extrude this. I may undo that. You know, it's playing around is what it is. You know, we have to kind of figure out the best way to create this piece. All right. So I think if I put an edge loop in here and edge loop in here, it kind of holds the shape a little bit better than it was. I'll go back to the front or the back view. I'm going to also do a cut tool, and the cut is going to allow me to go right down this edge. There we go. That's much nicer. I'm just kind of looking at it to see if I like the way it looks. You may want to come in here and just kind of shape some of these edges a little bit more. I'm going to switch to 3 just so I can see where that's at. Okay, now those ones going the other way too. Not a big deal to do. I just want to fix these ones up first. Oops. And again, right now I'm just playing with the shape of this. I'm just kind of looking at this to see, you know, what do I want it to look like. Let me duplicate it and push it back. Rotate it 90 degrees. Yeah, I think I definitely need these slats to be smaller and the spaces to be bigger. Okay. So this is just part of the process, right? So go to Vertex, go to my back view, and I'm just going to grab every other line. So I'm just grabbing the bottom of each one of these pieces. And then if I move it up, you see how I make that smaller. And then I can just kind of scale this, pull it down to fit. Now I have those bigger slats. Okay. Now it needs to be thicker too, so I'm just going to grab my scale tool and scale it up. And then also come in here to my back view and grab these, just give that a scale. Then grab these and give that a scale. Okay, so now we have that. It's pretty good. Now I can duplicate it, push it in, give it a rotation, and scoot it in. Now I'm just eyeballing that 90 degrees. There we go. Okay, so now we have these two. I just need to create a little handle on one of these, so I can just create a polygon cube. I'm going to hold down C with the move tool on and just middle drag. And just rotate, slide it into position. And just give this some bevel. And just kind of resize it. There we go. Maybe a little bit lower. Good. Okay. So now I'm just going to grab all this stuff. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to group. I'm going to negative scale it in the X direction. And it flips it over. And then I'm just going to go to my outliner and then just organize this stuff. So I have all of these. Plus I have this back plane. Plus I have these two pieces that I can group and say AC vents. Okay, so I can just save this now, and then we'll move on to the next parts of this.